Welcome to Animate Bible Stories. The Bible story for you today is David and Goliath. The setting, a nation at war. It was a tense time in the land of Israel. The Israelites, God's chosen people, were once again at war with their long-standing enemies, the Philistines. For many years, the Philistines had caused Israel much suffering, raiding their towns and cities, and now they were preparing for a decisive battle. The Philistine army had gathered at the Valley of Elah, standing on one side of the valley, while the Israelites, led by King Saul, were encamped on the opposite hill. Both armies had been at a standoff for days, neither wanting to make the first move. But the Philistines had a secret weapon, Goliath of Gath, a giant towering over 9 feet tall, clad in bronze armor that gleamed in the sunlight. His helmet was of pure bronze, his legs were protected by heavy greaves, and his spear was like a weaver's beam, massive and deadly, tipped with an iron point that weighed 15 pounds. He was an unstoppable force, and the Philistines were certain no man could defeat him. For 40 days, Goliath strutted in front of the Israelite army, mocking and defying them. Each day he would stand in the valley and shout, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Every day, Goliath's challenge went unanswered. The Israelites were terrified. Even King Saul, a once mighty warrior, was paralyzed with fear. No one dared to face the giant. David's arrival. Meanwhile, in a small town of Bethlehem, a young shepherd boy named David was busy tending his father's flock of sheep. David was the youngest of 8 sons of a man named Jesse, and while his older brothers were soldiers in Saul's army, David was still considered too young for war. He spent his days in the fields, playing his harp and writing songs to God. He was small in stature, with bright eyes and a heart full of courage, though no one had yet seen the bravery that lay within him. One day, Jesse sent David to the battlefield to bring food to his brothers and check on their well-being. As David approached the camp, he noticed the soldiers gathered, talking anxiously among themselves. The tension in the air was palpable, and it wasn't long before David heard Goliath's voice echoing through the valley. The giant was once again challenging the Israelites, mocking them, and defying the God of Israel. David's heart burned with anger. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? He asked the men around him. David's brothers, particularly Eliab, overheard him and rebuked him sharply. "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." But David wasn't discouraged. He knew in his heart that Goliath wasn't just defying Israel, but he was challenging God himself. He turned to the other soldiers and asked, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel?" Word soon reached King Saul that there was a young man in the camp speaking with great boldness, and David was brought before the king. David looked nothing like a warrior, he was just a boy, but there was something in his eyes, a confidence that Saul hadn't seen in any of his other soldiers. David's conviction. Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for you are only a boy, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David replied, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Moved by David's faith, Saul agreed. "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul then tried to dress David in his own armor, but David found it too heavy and cumbersome. He wasn't used to fighting with swords and armor. Instead, he chose to fight in the way he knew best. He took his shepherd's staff, his sling, and 5 smooth stones from a nearby brook. The battle begins. David approached the battlefield, his heart steady and his faith strong. As he neared Goliath, the giant looked at him in disdain. "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" Goliath roared. He cursed David by his gods and said, "Come here, and I will give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." But David was not intimidated. He replied, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." As Goliath moved closer to attack, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. He reached into his bag, took out a stone, and slung it. The stone flew through the air with deadly accuracy and struck Goliath on the forehead. The giant's massive frame teetered for a moment, then he fell face down on the ground, dead. Victory for Israel. There was a stunned silence as the Philistines watched their champion fall. David ran toward Goliath, drew the giant's own sword, and cut off his head, holding it high for all to see. The Philistines, seeing their hero defeated, turned and fled in terror. The Israelite army, emboldened by David's victory, surged forward and chased the Philistines all the way to the gates of their cities, leaving their bodies strewn along the road. David became a national hero that day, and his life was forever changed. The young shepherd boy who had placed his trust in God over worldly weapons and strength had proven that faith in God is more powerful than any sword or spear. The lesson: the story of David and Goliath is not just about a physical battle. It's about trusting in God, even when the odds seem impossible. David's victory shows that no matter how small or insignificant we may feel, God can use us to do great things when we put our faith in him. Just as David defeated Goliath, we too can overcome the giants in our lives, whether they be fear, doubt, or challenges that seem too great to face on our own. If you find this Bible story inspiring, please subscribe to Animate Bible Stories channel. Thank you.